"I doubt he'll change," someone close to the situation murmured. "He's firmly dedicated to his own principles of service. That much hasn't changed and likely never will." But behind the palace walls, a storm was brewing. Reports now claim that Queen Camilla has collapsed in the wake of an earth-shattering announcement made by Prince William, one that has sent shockwaves through the monarchy and thrown the royal household into chaos. This wasn't your average royal update. It was an astonishing, unforeseen declaration that blindsided even those within the highest echelons of the palace. As the dust settled, Queen Camilla, already navigating mounting pressure, was left visibly shaken, with hidden truths surfacing and long-standing power structures beginning to fracture. What exactly did William reveal? And why did it hit Camilla with such devastating force? Prepare yourself. This twist might just rewrite the future of the royal family. The day everything changed. On a serene spring morning, as sunlight bathed the towering facade of Buckingham Palace, the Union Jack flapped proudly in the breeze. Photographers readied their lenses, reporters murmured in hushed tones, and onlookers around the world waited with bated breath. What was meant to be a jubilant occasion, a celebration of tradition, unity, and regal continuity, quickly unraveled into something no one had anticipated. Inside the palace's opulent halls, world leaders, royal relatives, and dignitaries from across the Commonwealth mingled beneath chandeliers that had witnessed decades of history. Every gesture and greeting radiated ceremony and decorum. Yet, unbeknownst to those gathered, the atmosphere was about to shift dramatically. At the center of it all stood Prince William, composed as ever, a figure admired for his quiet strength and steadfast commitment to duty. Having spent his life under intense public scrutiny, he had consistently upheld royal expectations with grace and calm. But on this particular morning, something had changed. His voice carried an unfamiliar tone, steady, yet charged with deep emotion, as he delivered words that would pierce through the carefully constructed facade. What he said was both revealing and profoundly personal, and it struck such a chord that Queen Camilla, long seasoned to withstand criticism and controversy, physically collapsed under the weight of the moment. Before the public could even absorb the magnitude of William's declaration, thoughts turned to Camilla's turbulent journey within the royal narrative, a journey that had never followed the traditional script. Unlike many who marry into royalty, Camilla came from more grounded beginnings. Born in 1947, she was the daughter of Major Bruce Shand, a former Army officer turned wine merchant, and Rosalind Cubitt herself descended from the 3rd Baron Ashcombe. Though her family belonged to the upper middle class and moved in respectable circles, they lacked the aristocratic pedigree typical of royal consorts. This background became one of the early points of contention when her connection to Prince Charles became public. Camilla's early life unfolded between two distinct worlds, the vibrant rhythm of London and the tranquil beauty of the English countryside. It was in these contrasting settings that she nurtured a lifelong affection for horses, dogs, and the outdoors. Her education spanned several institutions: Dumbrell School in Sussex, Queensgate School in South Kensington, and later finishing schools in Switzerland and France. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Camilla chose not to attend university. Instead, she forged her own way, working as a secretary in the heart of London's West End, a decision that made her accessible to some, yet drew criticism from others who expected a more traditional path for someone eventually tied to royalty. Through every chapter of her journey, one person remained a steadfast ally: her younger sister, Annabel Elliot, born in 1949. The sisters shared a deep and enduring connection, bonded by mutual interest and an unwavering loyalty. In the harsh glare of public scrutiny, Annabel became Camilla's quiet refuge, her constant during moments when the rest of the world seemed loud with judgment. And so, when the golden grandeur of that significant day at Buckingham Palace gave way to something far more dramatic, it was not just the shock of Prince William's announcement that gripped the assembled audience. It was the culmination of years of hidden battles, emotional endurance, and an image carefully maintained, all of which flickered through Queen Camilla's shaken expression. What lay behind that fleeting look? What truth had surfaced, powerful enough to pierce the royal facade? Prince William's unimaginable declaration. Under a flawless spring sky in London, the royal courtyard was alive with pageantry. The thrones gleamed under the sun. Union Jack flags waved proudly in the breeze, and elegant rows of white roses lined the palace gardens, each bloom a testament to tradition and grace. Everything appeared as it should, majestic, precise, timeless. But beneath the polished surface of royal ceremony, a silent tension stirred, a quiet unraveling that would change everything. Queen Camilla, poised beside King Charles III, wore an immaculate white coat dress adorned with a diamond brooch that caught the morning light with every subtle movement. Her posture was regal, her face composed, though her tightly clasped hands betrayed an unspoken anxiety. King Charles sat with the weight of the crown pressing heavily upon him, his jaw clenched, his gaze distant. Just behind them, the next generation, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, watched with a mix of fascination and innocence, unaware of the history they were about to witness. The rest of the senior royals were gathered in solemn silence. Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and others seated in their traditional places, completely unprepared for the seismic shift that was moments away. Rumors had begun to circulate days prior. Prince William had requested an unscheduled address. In a world where every moment is planned with precision, even a minor deviation sent ripples through the royal corridors. "It's just a short speech," one aide had reportedly assured. But few truly believed that. William had been evolving, still respectful of his role, yet increasingly vocal about the need for change. He was no longer content with simply preserving the past. He wanted the monarchy to reflect the present and speak to the future. And then, the moment came. William rose from his seat with calm purpose, each movement measured and deliberate. A profound silence swept through the grand hall, heavier and deeper than any the palace had known before. The soft rustle of printed programs came to a halt. Even the birds beyond the windows seemed to quiet. Queen Camilla's hands gripped her booklet more tightly. King Charles turned his gaze toward his son, then toward his advisors, his expression unreadable. "Today," William began, his voice even and resolute, "we mark more than tradition. We recognize that true strength lies in evolution, and to lead, we must begin by listening." There was no fanfare, no royal flourish, just his voice, echoing across a chamber filled with expectation. With the eyes of the world fixed on him and millions watching from afar, Prince William delivered a bombshell announcement. With the consent of King Charles, he would begin assuming greater responsibilities. Not a formal regency, but an undeniable redistribution of authority. A shift in leadership, a changing of the guard. It was unexpected, not just in its timing, but in its openness and confidence. He spoke of expanding roles in foreign diplomacy, launching a renewed calendar of state visits, and establishing a royal advisory council intended not just to modernize the crown, but to broaden its base of leadership. Princess Anne and Prince Edward would take on elevated roles. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would spearhead initiatives focused on youth and mental health. Throughout his speech, William remained composed, respectful, but the underlying message was unmistakable. The future of the monarchy belonged to a new generation, and Camilla's name was never mentioned. As the vision of this revitalized royal structure came into focus, Camilla's polished demeanor began to slip. Her serene posture shifted, her eyes distant. She leaned toward a nearby aide and whispered something inaudible, then sat back, her lips pressed into a pale line. Though William spoke without accusation, his silence about Camilla was deafening. The woman who had spent decades reshaping her public image, from scandalized partner to crowned queen, now found herself quietly erased from the monarchy's evolving narrative. Then came the words that would dominate global headlines. The crown must no longer stand apart from the people. It must walk beside them. Its legitimacy must rest not solely on heritage, but on service, humility, and progress. He spoke of a monarchy reimagined, one that no longer relied on tradition alone, but that earned its relevance through action. Even the role and title of Queen Consort, William hinted, would be reassessed in light of this new vision. Gasps spread through the crowd like a ripple across still water. The once celebratory garden held its collective breath. Camilla's complexion paled. Her grip tightened on her program as if it were the only thing grounding her. Though she tried to maintain composure, the blow had clearly landed. And it landed hard. Moments later, under the gaze of cameras and dignitaries alike, her body shifted. She leaned ever so slightly. Her shoulders slumped. Color drained from her face. Her breathing quickened. And then, in a moment that would be replayed endlessly, Queen Camilla collapsed into her seat. The spectacle dissolved. The fairy tale shimmered and cracked, and across Buckingham Palace, through Westminster, and beyond the palace gates, one truth reverberated with finality. The age of transition had not merely begun, it had arrived with thunder. A fall that stopped the monarchy cold. The gravity of William's declaration still echoed when subtle signs of distress appeared on the royal dais. Camilla, dressed impeccably in white, her brooch catching the morning light just moments before, suddenly clutched the armrest of her chair. Her hand, gloved in ivory satin, trembled. Her lips parted slightly as though grasping for air. At first, few noticed. The crowd was still processing the magnitude of what had just been said, but close to the front, a lady-in-waiting noticed the Queen's subtle collapse, the shift in posture, the shallow breathing. Camilla's chest rose and fell more rapidly now. Her previously composed frame seemed to weaken. A flicker crossed her eyes, fleeting and faint. The diamond brooch on her chest, once gleaming with ceremonial pride, now seemed discordant, like a symbol at odds with its bearer. She reached out slightly, her fingers brushing against the sleeve of an aid, searching perhaps for balance or connection. And then, as the cameras continued to roll, the Queen Consort lost her grip on the moment, her strength giving way under the immense pressure of a throne in transition. Queen Camilla slumped forward, her body yielding completely under the weight of the moment. A collective gasp swept through the audience, not the polite murmurs of surprise often heard at royal events, but a visceral, unrestrained sound born from the shock of witnessing tradition shatter in real time. Camera lenses, hidden behind elaborate floral displays and flanked by palace guards, hesitated. Some operators instinctively zoomed in, others pulled back, uncertain whether to capture what was clearly no longer part of the royal script. The press gallery fell still. What had begun as a carefully staged ceremony had suddenly shifted into something raw, unpredictable, and profoundly human. King Charles bolted from his chair, alarm twisting his features as he reached for his wife. His voice, rarely heard outside ceremonial occasions, rang out with frantic urgency as he called her name. Princess Anne reacted instantly, signaling for medical staff as Catherine, with maternal instinct, shielded her children from the distressing scene. Prince William, who had only just stepped down from the podium, turned sharply. His face was unreadable, suspended somewhere between shock and the burden of leadership. From behind a line of royal staffers, medics emerged with practiced urgency, moving swiftly to the dais. Guests remained motionless, gripped by a surreal combination of concern and disbelief. For a fleeting moment, it no longer felt like a royal gathering at all. It felt like a crisis unfolding in front of a global audience. The white roses bordering the courtyard lost their calming charm. The fluttering royal banners seemed suddenly hollow. The grandeur evaporated. Camilla was gently lifted onto a stretcher. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing shallow and uneven. The crowd fell into a hushed silence, broken only by the occasional whisper. Was it a heart attack? A stroke? A panic episode? Some exchanged glances suggesting a deeper suspicion that Camilla may have been aware of William's impending revelation, had tried to brace herself for it, but ultimately found the moment too overwhelming to endure. Within the hour, Clarence House issued a short statement. Her Majesty Queen Camilla experienced a brief dizzy spell and is under medical care. She is stable and in good spirits. But inside the palace, the atmosphere told another story. Princess Catherine and Princess Anne were escorted to a private room. Prince William, visibly shaken, canceled the remainder of the day's engagements. Aides moved with focused urgency, closing off access and shielding the family from further exposure. Behind closed doors, whispers circulated among staff and insiders. Camilla, it was said, had been under increasing strain. With King Charles's health reportedly deteriorating and William and Catherine's public favor growing, Camilla had begun to feel increasingly sidelined. Her calendar had been quietly trimmed, her responsibilities quietly redistributed. There were even murmurs that she had begun to question her relevance in the monarchy's evolving landscape. To some, her collapse felt like more than a health scare. It was a symbol, a moment where personal fatigue collided with institutional transformation. Was she blindsided by William's announcement? Was she excluded from the private discussions that had redrawn the monarchy's direction? As the ambulance disappeared through the palace gates and headlines ignited across the globe, what initially looked like a medical emergency now seemed far more consequential. Camilla's fall appeared to expose not just the fragility of one royal figure, but the deeper, widening fissures within a royal house caught between past and future. But what if Queen Camilla's sudden collapse wasn't just a health scare, but a rare, visible crack in the polished facade of a centuries-old institution? Don't look away. The palace's response and the public's reaction marked what many are now calling a tipping point. As Camilla was carried out of the courtyard on a stretcher, the stillness that followed spoke louder than any official statement. The cameras, still rolling, captured more than a fainting spell. They filmed the unraveling of royal control in real time. Within minutes, the now viral footage was splashed across television screens, smartphones, and digital feeds around the world. A pale and motionless Camilla collapsing in front of Britain's most powerful. It became the image of the day, and perhaps of a generation. Hashtags like Camilla Collapse and Royal Reckoning exploded on social media. TikTok users broke the footage down second by second. Twitter turned into a chaotic storm of speculation, sympathy, and sharp-edged opinion. In a digital era where control over narrative is nearly impossible, the monarchy found itself vulnerable, not to scandal, but to transparency. Inside the palace, chaos replaced ceremony. Staff barked orders into radios, security scrambled to seal exits, and guests were discreetly funneled out through quiet corridors. Behind closed doors, Camilla lay on a bed in a royal suite surrounded by doctors and aides. The tension in the room was unmistakable. Some staff were seen with tears in their eyes. Others exchanged looks of grim resignation. They had seen this coming. For weeks, insiders whispered that something wasn't right. The official diagnosis would soon be given, a syncopal episode, likely caused by emotional stress and low blood pressure. But many believed the explanation was more complex. Camilla, once viewed as a resilient figure who clawed her way from public scandal to royal acceptance, had been quietly unraveling. Recently, she had been excluded from key meetings, sidelined in royal planning, and her influence steadily diminished. Not through controversy, but through deliberate shifts in power. And then came William's speech, poised, articulate, and thunderous in its implications. He presented a vision of a monarchy built on transparency, relevance, and shared responsibility. It wasn't framed as rebellion, but the symbolism was undeniable. William was taking the reins, and the old guard was being gently, but unmistakably, pushed aside. For Camilla, the message was devastating. It wasn't just a constitutional update, it was a deeply personal blow. A reshuffling that undercut her role, her dignity, and her years of hard-won public acceptance. To be reduced in significance in such a public, irreversible way left her humiliated in front of the very institution she had worked to stabilize. King Charles, reportedly blindsided, was seen making urgent phone calls in the hours that followed. His composure, often unshakable, had visibly cracked. Clarence House released a statement, carefully crafted, calling Camilla's condition a temporary episode of exhaustion and assuring the public she was recovering well. But outside the palace walls, few were convinced. That evening, headlines were blunt. Queen collapses after Prince's speech. a monarchy at the brink. It wasn't just about a woman's health anymore. It was about shifting power, about symbolism, about the future. Pundits and experts flooded the airwaves. Some called it a long-overdue generational shift. Others framed it as the quiet decline of a monarchy, struggling to keep pace with modern expectations. TikTok lit up with stylized edits of William and Catherine cast as the faces of a refreshed crown, while Camilla was recast by many as a fading figure, unable to endure the accelerating change around her. This was no longer a ceremonial misstep. It was a reckoning, not just for Camilla, but for the very structure of the monarchy itself. Younger generations online saw the incident as more than just a dramatic moment. To them, it was a long-overdue generational handover. "The future's arrived," one viral post read, "and it wears a different crown." Inside the palace, unease thickened. Camilla was discreetly transferred to a royal medical center under a veil of privacy. Though official sources described her as stable, she was reportedly deeply shaken. Leaks soon emerged suggesting she had suffered a similar, though private, episode just days earlier, one that was quietly managed without public notice. Meanwhile, King Charles remained conspicuously silent. With scheduled appearances quietly canceled, speculation swirled not only about Camilla's condition, but also about the king's own health and state of mind. In the midst of uncertainty, one figure emerged with a steadying presence: Catherine, Princess of Wales. Appearing alone at a modest engagement days later, she spoke briefly. "The future must be guided by unity, resilience, and service. Together." The words were few, but in the context of national anxiety, they rang out as a gentle but unmistakable statement of intent. The shifting balance of the monarchy. While Catherine's calm demeanor offered a sense of continuity, the royal foundation beneath her was already in flux. Camilla's public collapse had become more than a health concern. It marked a pivotal shift that exposed long-simmering tensions within Buckingham Palace. The monarchy, long defined by its ritual and rigid hierarchy, now stood between two competing forces: the ceremonial gravity of tradition and the accelerating momentum of reform. Those within palace walls could feel it. Something had changed. What had once been whispered privately about a generational power shift now echoed in media rooms and public discourse. In the aftermath, attention quickly turned to Prince William. His carefully composed speech did more than reaffirm support for his father. It restructured the internal hierarchy of the monarchy. Though Charles remained king, it was William who now held the reins in the public eye. His words had carried the assuredness of a leader already assuming authority, not merely assisting it. From that moment, William became the face of all major foreign relations, including the upcoming and highly anticipated Commonwealth tour. Catherine's role expanded as well, with a new nationwide mental health initiative under her leadership. Conspicuously absent from this new royal roadmap was Queen Camilla. Her disappearance from the public calendar spoke volumes. While official statements cited rest and recovery, palace insiders acknowledged that longer-term discussions were underway. Some advisors were reportedly considering repositioning Camilla into a quieter, more supportive role, akin to the one Prince Philip once held, rather than retaining her as a primary ceremonial figure. Public opinion seemed to reflect this quiet transition. Polls showed overwhelming support for William and Catherine, especially among younger demographics, who viewed them as accessible, modern, and capable of leading the monarchy through change. Beyond Britain, the global reaction was cautious but clear. World leaders issued formal statements reaffirming confidence in the monarchy, though many noted the weight of what had just unfolded. Beneath the diplomatic phrasing was a shared recognition. Something profound had shifted. Political analysts across Europe and the Commonwealth debated the significance. Had Charles approved William's bold statement, or had it marked the beginning of a discreet but undeniable divide within the royal family? The monarchy, still adorned in tradition, now appeared vulnerable, perched between a fading legacy and a future yet to be defined. To traditionalists, it felt like a loss, the erosion of royal protocol, of unspoken codes of loyalty. To younger audiences raised on transparency and instant communication, it was a necessary rupture. William's decisiveness was hailed as the catalyst for overdue reform. He was praised not just as an heir, but as a reformer unafraid to challenge outdated systems. On TikTok and Twitter, the narrative was already being rewritten. Edits celebrated the rise of a new royal dynamic, while Camilla's collapse was reframed as the symbolic fall of an era. And still, behind the palace's heavy doors, late-night meetings stretched into the early hours. Advisors debated how to proceed. Should the monarchy officially reassign roles? Should they move toward a soft regency, modern in spirit, if not in name? One truth had become impossible to deny. The crown may still rest on King Charles's head, but the center of royal gravity had shifted, permanently. Tension continued to mount behind the walls of the palace. Those close to Queen Camilla acknowledged she felt increasingly marginalized, perhaps even blindsided, though they insisted her sense of duty remained unwavering. But in a monarchy built as much on perception as protocol, loyalty may no longer be enough to ensure her place at the forefront. The British royal institution, long defined by tradition and spectacle, appeared to be buckling under the pressure of rapid transformation. And in the growing fracture, a question began to resonate, from the halls of Parliament to the pages of social media, from political circles to everyday conversation. Has this royal generation already begun its final act? Keep watching as experts weigh in on Prince William's bold maneuver. As the impact of Queen Camilla's dramatic collapse continued to ripple through Buckingham Palace, a broader reckoning was underway. The world watched as the monarchy, known for its carefully curated control, faced a crisis unlike any in modern memory. Royal commentators across continents rushed to analyze the fallout, but regardless of differing views, one consensus emerged. Prince William's announcement hadn't just shifted the royal dynamic, it had shattered the status quo. One distinguished royal historian, speaking candidly during a BBC segment, didn't hold back. This is the most significant internal rupture since the 1936 abdication crisis, even more consequential than the Sussex departure. In his view, William's move wasn't just justified, it was long overdue. Veteran royal correspondent Belinda Nash took it even further. She argued that William wasn't merely advocating for reform, he was fighting for the monarchy's core identity. This isn't about clinging to outdated ceremony, she said. It's about restoring the crown's relevance. The monarchy should serve the people, not insulate itself from them. But not everyone saw the shift as visionary. Behind the scenes, murmurs of dissent began to emerge. Some loyalists to King Charles viewed the prince's actions as a challenge to the traditional reign. Quietly, palace insiders suggested that Camilla's collapse, though officially attributed to medical reasons, may have stemmed from the emotional toll of being excluded from decisions that directly reshaped her role and the monarchy itself. Whether King Charles had quietly endorsed his son's statement or was caught off guard by it remains a tightly guarded mystery. Senior royals like Princess Anne and Prince Edward were reportedly treading cautiously, assessing whether to align with William's modernizing vision or uphold the traditional framework they had long supported. One palace source painted a stark picture. "We've weathered wars, scandals, and divorces, but never an internal revolution." What was unfolding was more than a succession plan. It was a full-blown identity crisis for the monarchy, a reckoning years in the making. The quiet fissures of the past had finally broken open, catalyzed by a single speech that many interpreted not just as policy, but as a generational rebellion. William's address defied the usual constraints of royal etiquette. It was, in essence, a public demand. That tradition must adapt or risk being left behind. And as Queen Camilla was quietly escorted out of the palace that day, her exit felt symbolic, not just of a personal moment, but of a greater shift underway. It was the closing of one royal chapter and the unmistakable start of another. But what truly drove Queen Camilla to that breaking point? Was it betrayal, anxiety, or the silent political battle taking shape behind gilded doors? Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more on this unfolding royal transformation.